My name is Gideon Badagawa. I am the Executive Director of the Private Sector Foundation Uganda, which is the apex body for the private sector, the business community in this country. Here at PSFU, like in other institutions, we observe the standard operating procedures because of the challenge that we have on the COVID pandemic. So we wear masks every time in office, outside office, and in the rest of the public. And we do observe the rest of the standard operating procedures, including sanitizing and social distancing. But because I'm in my office and I'm more or less alone here, allow me to pull off my mask so that you are able to hear me out loud and clear. As I told you, my name is Gideon Badagawa. I'm the Chief Executive of this organization, PSFU. I'll be talking to you about the journey of PSFU since we were established 25 years ago. We were actually established in 1995 as an organization to represent the private sector in this country. Back then, 25 years ago, 11 associations, the Federation of Uganda Employers, Bankers Association, Insurers, the Law Society, the Farmers Federation, Women Entrepreneurs. There were 11 associations then that came together, worked with the World Bank and the government of Uganda to establish the institution of PSFU. And the main reason for establishment of this institution was twofold. One, to speak on behalf of the private sector, small, medium, and large companies, associations, cooperatives, and so on, but also to build their capacity to face the market competitively. So we talk about unity, efficiency, and competitiveness when we were starting. We wanted to espouse these aspects in the private sector, to unite so that we can face the market together. When we are together, one, we risk ourselves, but two, we compete better in the marketplace. And therefore we build efficiency as we do the different types of businesses that we do. So it was twofold: policy advocacy and business development. Now, because PSFU was established initially as a project of the World Bank, we called it the Private Sector Competitiveness Project. If you like, one, because later there was PSCP2. So the Private Sector Competitiveness Project was had a number of components. You had the investment promotion, you had the policy analysis and advocacy, but also the BADS, which we called then the Business Uganda Development Scheme, which was focused on SMEs, because largely the private sector then and now continues to be largely constituted by very, very small and medium-sized enterprises. At the founding of this organization, we had several partners, among whom was the United Nations Development Program. Rest in peace, Thomas Babatunde was the res rep then, and came together with then the Manufacturers Association and the government of Uganda, as well as the World Bank, to discuss the formation of this organization. So UNDP played a significant role in the formation and organizing of the private sector in this country. Actually, up till now, you continue to hear about the private sector promotion centers at the regional level, in Mbale and all that. So these were formations that came about as a result of the effort that was put in by the United Nations Development Program. I'm very proud with these partners, especially World Bank and the UNDP, because up till now, we continue to work with them 25 years later. There is no single year that we have not worked or managed the project of the World Bank since then. And for me, I'm really very proud about this. We have worked with the UNDP, with the UNICEF, with the UN Women now, talking about gender issues, we're talking about the environment, we're talking about, child neglect and all these, programs. They have now been espoused and centered within PSF. Since then, as an organization, we have been able to move beyond competing in the marketplace and making money. Because you see, the primary focus of the private sector is to invest and make money. You maximize return on your investments. But since we have been able to advise and get the private sector to appreciate that you can only sustain this investment, even when you make money, by focusing on a number of other issues, including management of the environment and protecting the environment and sustaining the environment, but also supporting and promoting the whole concept around shared value, social responsibility. Minding about the people that stand for our businesses, that work for us. So beyond the profits, we have been able to emphasize the whole aspect about people and planet. This is where sustainability of investments actually come from. So since 1995 up till about 2002, when we had the very first branding, we were focusing on a project like activity, as I said, because we were established as a project. So we became a formidable institution in 2002. Now, I told you that we started with 11 associations. Our viewers out there may wish to know that right now, PSFU is home to more than 250 members. They are all coordinated from here, from a mere 11 associations. And they were associations, they were not corporates. Right now, we have diversified the membership of PSFU to include associations, but also corporate entities that support, especially engagement in advocacy. Because we have multinationals that are members of PSF, and the reason they are members of PSF is to support the advancement of policy engagement and advocacy and lobbying on behalf of the private sector. Some of these you may know include Coca-Cola, include a number of other, multinational, the banks, Stand Chart, and so on and so forth. The whole reasoning is these guys have invested elsewhere and know what works and what doesn't work. So when we talk about engagement and influencing policy reform, budget policy, and otherwise, these people understand what works elsewhere and could probably work here, especially within the African setting. Ethiopia, Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa, and so on and so forth. So these are people that are investing around Africa and understand what works and what doesn't work. So they are part of the PSF. Within the membership, we also saw it fit, and we really want to appreciate the person of James Mulwana. He has since passed on, actually passed on in 2013, but he was the first chairman of this organization. He was the chairman of Uganda Manufacturers Association when PSFU was being formed. And after, of course, he became the chairman of PSFU. So the idea was that when the 11 associations came together, one of them had to be a chairman of PSF. And naturally, because of the person of his standing, James Mulwana, naturally had to be, elected to steer forward this Apex organization. And I'll also tell you that the Chamber of Commerce was one of the 11 associations that formed PSF. In other environments, elsewhere, when you go to other countries, you find that chambers of commerce actually are the apex organizations for the business community. In our case, it's unique. It's the other way around. It's part and parcel of the 250 formation. So James Mulwana ran this organization for till about 2008, from 1995. And from 2008, we had the former minister, Gerard Sendaula, who came in from 2008 up till about 2013, thereabouts. And then we had Mr. Vitature, Patrick Vitature, to take over from 2013 up till about 2019. Those were 6 years. Our Bisanja here, 3 years. So as you can see, our chairmen have actually all been very, very, very distinguished business persons. Right now, our chairman is Honorable Dr. Erika Ruhanga. I think many of us quite obviously know this personality, distinguished as diplomat, businessman, distinguished lawyer, name it. He has been there for the private sector and continues to steer forward this organization. In terms of staffing, we have grown from a staff of merely, in 1995 there were about 5 staff. 5, including the chairman, was also part of the 5. And we have been able to grow from that to now about 90, 95 staff. Why was PSFU established? And principally the idea was to organize the private sector. Because we know that, and we have always said it, the future belongs to the organizers. The future of this country is in the private sector. And the private sector can only own this future if they are organized. That's the reason for PSFU. And they will be organized with good policies, with good regulatory practices, with good information about markets and how they respond to these market signals, standards, and all these kind of things. So we do training, we do business advisory, we do coaching and mentorship in all the projects and programs that we espouse here at PSF. For instance, I will give you an example. We have been able to give business development support to more than 100,000 enterprises in this country. Most of them small and micro, because 90% of our private sector in this country are actually MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises. They are not large. We don't give BDS to Madivani. We don't give BDS to Uganda Clays or to Uganda Breweries. These are big enterprises. They know how to get their auditors. They know how to manage their finances. They know how to plan for this, where to get their labor and how to, to train their labor and so on. Most of these small enterprises, which are due to grow, because we always talk about a nascent private sector, very, very young private sector. They need support. They need hand-holding. When a private sector goes to the bank, they need to be helped to secure that bank loan and understand what it takes to secure that loan and whether they will be able to pay back or whether their businesses are going to be sold. These are the things that we need to tell them about. Insurance. Why go for an insurance cover? In what formation? Fire, burglary, accident, whatever. Many people are importing. They are doing cross-border, and they really need cover. They need to be informed about this. Contracts, they are signing contracts. Business is built on partnerships. What does a partnership involve? Our businesses need to understand all these things. So, why was PSFU established? We wanted to build the capacity for the SMEs to be able to compete better in the marketplace. And when we were established, we knew that markets are going to be wider than Uganda, than Kampala. You think aloud, you think outside Uganda. That's why we have, since 2000 or 1998, when we started looking back at reformation of the ESC treaty, Okay, re-establishment of the East African community, the integration process started 20 years ago. And we were, in fact, James Murwana, our first chairman, in 2005, led the negotiations in Arusha on the formation of the customs union in East Africa, and later of the common market in 2010. Okay, so PSFU, actually we are the focal point of the East African Business Council. We are also the focal point of the COMESA Business Council, CBC. So there's a lot of engagement that we have on the regional platform. We played a significant role as PSFU in establishing the private sector federation in Rwanda. It was a consultancy from PSFU that established Rwanda PSF. It was a consultancy from PSF Uganda that established the Tanzania Private Sector Foundation. And we have been part and parcel in the formation of the Chamber of Commerce in South Sudan. Manu Chandaria, the first chair of the East African Business Council. James Murwana came to be the second chair of the East African Business Council because of the role that he played at the very beginning in pulling together the regional private sector. So we want to influence regional policy at that level, and we continue to do so. Right now, 4 of our private sector people here are actually forming part of the board of the East African Business Council, as well as the COMESA Business Council. We have a representation here from here onto that board. One of the reasons we established is to do business development support, work with banks, source money, capital, invest in these guys and make sure that they are doing the kind of things that the markets are looking for. Skills. We have partnered with the World Bank. Skills cut across all sectors. How do you do the things that you do? What capacities, what competencies do you have to be able to deliver to the market? That is skills. So labor productivity is actually based on how you develop your skills. If you don't train your people, if you don't nurture them, both with vocational skills, but also with the soft skills, the levels of integrity, market intelligence, issues to do with the customer care, and things like that, because they matter a lot in business growth and sustenance. We do a lot of training, and we have a whole project here supported by the World Bank up to the tune of $20 million. Skills development facility. It's part of the bigger project of the government of Uganda, skills development project. $80 million are sitting in the Ministry of Education to do many other things, including the establishment of the skills authority, the structures on the skills councils and so on. But we are basically looking at employer-led short-term training for the private sector here, using that 20. And we have done significant, amazing issues here. So that is on the skills development arrangement. PSFU, right now, we have chosen that we structure ourselves around 12 sectors. Government has got 16 sectors. Every time we go into a budget framework paper, we are looking across at 16 sectors. So every time we go into discussing budget policy, we go through what we call the sector working groups. So the private sector presents the agricultural sector, and the government of Uganda, through the Ministry of Agriculture, presents the sector working group. And we enjoin and work out an arrangement that we all think can be able to take forward the agricultural sector. The same thing goes with the tourism sector, with the oil and gas sector, and so on and so forth. Actually, the board of PSFU right now is structured around sectors. You must lead a sector before you join the board of PSFU. And actually, our chairman is the chairman of the oil and gas sector. Then we have the vice chair, is the chairman of the agriculture sector, and so on and so forth. So tourism, the leader of tourism becomes a board member, and so on and so forth. Much of the challenge that we had then was inaccessibility to electricity. The utilization of electricity, we had 3 challenges: the availability, of electricity, so the generation was low. The accessibility, people could not connect. Right now, the connection is going on, and we are very happy with the REA, the Rural Electrification Agency. But we also had a challenge on utilization. So it was availability, very poor, accessibility, very poor, utilization, very poor. There were no activities that you would actually use electricity and be able to pay the bills and so on. So growth came down, started to come down. And then up till last year, if you like, we were talking about 6.2%, which was still a very fast growth if you look at Africa. And generally in the world, 6.2% was very fast. But like everywhere else, we had a challenge of COVID, and this growth had to come down to 3.1. Why? Because most of the private sector was shut down, as we understood. Most of the areas that used to bring growth, used to spell growth, like construction, agriculture, tourism, went completely down. Hotels and hospitality, you knew they were all shut down, people were sent home. Employment actually went down. And therefore, the tax mobilization had to go down. That is a big challenge to this economy and to the private sector. Because the more we grow in terms of the tax base, the more the mobilization in terms of the tax yield, domestic resource mobilization. Now, if we don't do that, if we have a shrinking tax base, then we must manage ourselves. And this is where now the challenge is for both economy and the individual private sector. We must tighten our belts today. Why? Because the tax base has shrunk. We have not created as much employment yet. So we need to do a lot in terms of structuring, planning, and prioritization. As far as the private sector is concerned, we are now, as we move into the future, we are working a lot with the UNDP, especially, and the government of Uganda, the Office of the Prime Minister, especially on the implementation of Agenda 2030. Now, why are we so much involved as private sector? It is because of the social investments that we must have, which we think are critical for sustenance of businesses. Job creation, especially for the young people, is going to be very critical. If you look across the 17 goals, there's a lot that there are lots of opportunities the private sector can be able to seize. Energy, environment, poverty, food production, health issues, education. There are many opportunities that the private sector can build. As private sector, I'm very happy with the partnerships that we have in government and outside government. In government, because the president himself has always talked about socio-economic transformation and really wants to use the private sector to drive this as the key to socio-economic transformation, because we are the job creators, if you like. Job creators in a sense that we provide the opportunities. People who are going to sustain these jobs are those that are looking for the jobs. And we have had occasion to explain how this is going to happen. We are contributing to the NDP, so we work a lot with the National Planning Authority, the Ministry of Finance. We really want to thank them for the partnership that we continue to have with them. The Parliament, there are many bills that go through Parliament, business-related legislation that go through Parliament. And we keep engaging with the Speaker, with the different parliamentary committees, on different assignments and so on. This is the only way we are going to enjoy, we are going to build public-private partnership to support the growth of the nascent private sector. And on the other hand, we have these international development partners. The World Bank, right now we have a formidable project, the Competitiveness and Enterprise Development Project, which we are managing on behalf of government. And we have signed agreements with the World Bank, with the government of Uganda, to be able to coordinate activities around this project. Recently, we have had an extension of up to 2022. I told you that since inception, we have been working with the World Bank. And so the focus is to enhance the competitiveness of the private enterprise, to create jobs, to be able to sustain economic growth. So with that, really, I want to thank the various partners that we have been able to work with, but most importantly, the private sector that have been able to enjoy across the different sectors and consolidate the formation of PSFU. The harmony, the cohesion that we have had within the private sector is formidable. We really want, and at the beginning, this is what we want, this was the intention, that we unite to compete. We cooperate to compete. And this has come through. I really want to thank the private sector. In whatever formation you are, whatever businesses they are doing, you are anchoring this economy, and we take you with the highest value. One of the things that we have realized as the local private sector is that we need to drive markets. We need to understand where markets are and how to enter these markets in a sustainable way. And when we talk about a sustainable way, we are looking at volumes being aggregated, mobilized, but also standards being espoused. The quality of the product that is entering these markets. When we sat down with the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, and I really want to thank them most sincerely, we came out with the BUBU policy, which was actually signed off after about 10 years. We started discussing this in 2007, 2008. We had an industrial policy, we had a trade policy, both of them actually talking about promotion of local production. But it was only until 10 years that government came through to sign a framework and a policy on Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. What this policy does is to enhance local capacities for the private enterprises. And this is where we must go. We must look at our local opportunities, our local markets, because if you can't market in Uganda, sincerely, however much opportunity you have in the United States and AGOA, however much opportunity you have in Europe and everything but arms, now we are about to sign the economic partnership agreements with Europe. And also China is there with a formidable market. But all these markets, we cannot enter them unless we are able to produce and offer to our own markets here locally. And that's why we talk about appreciating our own and buying our own, as long as we meet the expectations of the market. I really want to appreciate and thank the management and leadership at the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation. I think we have walked the journey together since inception, since PSFU was established. Then I think you were Uganda Television, but you have been able to rebrand, you have been able to do many things with us in the private sector. You have hosted the private sector on many occasions on different programs that relate to business, and we have talked together. We have been able to educate, to inform our people of what's going on. So we really much appreciate the journey that we have walked in tandem together with you and the staff there. I really want to most appreciate this engagement and the partnership that we have had. I thank you very much.